Alrighty, welcome. This is Business 130, Principles of Macroeconomics. This is the third week. So we completed the first two chapters in the first 2 weeks. And until now, you had time to get to the rhythm, see how the system works, how Connect works, etc. So now what we're going to do, we are going to look at week 3. This week we do 2 chapters. And the 2 chapters, one is very important, is supply demand, which is the base for every economics. So if you end up taking also microeconomics, this is a chapter that you will do again, very similar in micro, because it's the base for understanding how the price system works and how price determines the equilibrium between production and demand from consumers. And then the next chapter is we start to look at the macro part of the economy. So what are we talking about when we talk about macroeconomics? So soon after the video, I'll post the announcement for, you can see when you go to the page here, there are the announcements. And remember, last week there was one student that he said here, week 2 announcement singular, but every time is announcement. So you have to complete all the assignments that appear in the folder. But in any case, when you go to there, like usual, you go to coursework. In coursework, you slide down. First, there's some information again, something that you will not see because they're just for instructors. And then you will see the weekly work. So when you go to the weekly work here, which is week 3, you will see there are things to do. There are some readings to do, watching some videos, reading some PowerPoint slides, which we'll talk about some of them in a minute. And then week 3 assignments. And then a little quiz that summarizes chapters 1 to 4. Okay, and then the discussion board question. The discussion board is important because you show me that you did some work and you can explain some of the things that we discuss in the topic that I asked you. So when you go down, you will see what we discussed, which is supply demand and how the economy works. Okay, so you can see how macroeconomics is. And then you go to material resources. You will see that there are a couple of videos that are helpful. Actually, you can do that. There are a couple of videos that are helpful here about supply demand. And then I'll post this video on the announcements because that's probably the best place so you can watch it as you go and as you find it. But then there are the 2 PowerPoint slide sets, so you can do that. And again, these 2 links take you directly to the chapter in the book. So since we discussed that, let's go and look a bit of PowerPoints here. One is supply demand, and supply demand, it's very important. These videos are just to give you a little introduction because there are many videos you can watch and read the chapters. So the explanation is right there. But the main idea here is how do consumers and producers behave? And when we look at consumers, you have this thing which you will get used to see because you will see many times, the demand curve. You have price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis. That's how we measure how much people demand of a certain good depending on the price. And so normally, if you think about it, if you think about your behavior, as the price goes up, you will buy less. As the price goes down, you'll buy more. As the price of gas goes up a lot, you will start thinking, well, can I incorporate some car trips? Can we find maybe carpooling? Can we find way to consume less gas? So you can see the relationship. And as the price decreases, you do less of that. And so this is demand. For supply, is what producers do, and they have the opposite effect on price changes. So an increase in price, which doesn't mean that stuff costs more to them to buy. It means they can charge more for the same item, everything else being equal. It means that they will produce more. The signal is make more. So when you put the 2 together, supply and demand, you get this thing that is called supply demand model, and you have a demand negatively slope, supply positively slope. And when the price is off balance, so the price is above $3 here, if you go and look at the price of 3, that means a lot gets produced, little bit gets demanded because it goes down here, and you have this difference. In this case, you have a surplus. The surplus will be a signal for producers to make less, because that means there's a lot of unsold stuff. What happens when there is unsold stuff? You make less because you gotta get rid of the extra, and because you see you're not selling them much. What is the consequence of making less? Is that the price, when you make less, the price will go down. And as the price goes down, you get towards this equilibrium where the quantity that people want is equal to the quantity that people demand. Okay, and the opposite is if you start from a very low price, you have a high demand and very low quantity produced. That's called shortage. What you do in case of a shortage? If you're a producer, you see people want your stuff a lot more than you can make. What you do? You raise the price, and so this pushes price to that level. And so the chapter talks about what happens if something else besides the price, changes, and how you find this equilibrium between supply and demand. So do that, and you will understand how this model works. This model, it's important because initially, you look at it from a specific market perspective. This is one market. What happened to that market of that item? Say, I don't know, computers, whatever, right? Cars. But you can apply that, we'll see in a couple of chapters, to the entire economy. So you have a model that is called aggregate supply, aggregate demand, which looks at the demand and supply for the entire economy and the price level for the economy as a whole. And that's a very important model to understand. So you will do this chapter, you look at changes, supply, demand, and that's a good chapter for you to know and understand. So make sure you spend time on that and you get it correctly, because it's also important when you look at changes in your daily life. Like this model helps a lot, explains why things change in price, like specific markets. So this is not a model that describes the entire economy. We'll do this later in one of the other chapters when we look at inflation in general, what can drive up inflation or down inflation. This is the micro model that applies to a specific market. So you can think about the price of gas going up and down independently of other factors. And that could be because there is more people that drive, or there is less people that buy gas cars, and now there's less demand for gas, whatever, right? And so important model. Then let's quickly look at the other series here of slides. The other one is what macro is. So now we switch gears. We go from kind of individual behavior to the whole economy. And so this chapter, talks about what do we learn? What is macroeconomics? What type of data do we look at? And then what kind of policies we do? And then understanding normative and positive economics. What does it mean? And then the difference between micro and macro. Okay? And so just look at some examples. So the chapter talks about all that, so you will get into that very easily. But you can see here, for example, this is the output. I don't know if you heard the terms GDP, gross domestic product. That is the output of the entire US economy. And this is how it changed over time. You can see from 1929. And then you can see most of the time it goes up, sometimes it goes down a little bit. Those are the recessions, so but the trend is up. And then you can see here how many trillions. This is 12. So for example, this is 16,000 billions, which is 16 trillion of dollars. And that's how the economy changed. And then you can tell you here how the size of the economy was 15 times in 29 than it was in 15 times today that it was in 1929. This is adjusted for inflation. You can see here is that the price level is kept constant. Now, remember, this is the total. So when you look at the total, is the sum of all activity. And of course, if population changes, you get more activity. Maybe not because each person individually in average is richer, but because there's more people, right? You could have more people with less activity per person, and your total economy might grow. So you can see here the difference between the output per, so you can see per worker and per person, right? And so you can see here as the output per worker goes up, but it goes up less than it went when you look at the other graph. And per person is different because per person measures everybody that work and doesn't work. Here is only the workers. And as the difference increases, that tells you that a smaller percentage of the population are working. So now people retire a bit early, people stay longer in school. And so there are reasons why the workforce has shrank. And we will look at that because it's also an important factor. And then let's go down and see some other graphs here. Graphs are important, and you need to get that. So for example, here's a look at productivity and the difference between China and the United States. Productivity is how much a worker produces in a set amount of time, so in an hour, and you can see what's the value of the production. And so you can look at this at the aggregate level for the entire economy. That's an important factor. Then something else that economists look at the macro level is, for example, unemployment. Unemployment is the other one. So one is output, how much stuff gets produced. The other one is unemployment. How many people are looking for jobs and cannot find jobs? So an economy that has a lot of unemployed people, people that want to find jobs and don't have jobs, it's a very bad economy. You want the good economies where if people want jobs, they can find them quite easily, and unemployment is very low, like now, which is about less than 4%. And historically, you can see less than 4%, it's very good. Okay, there have been very few times when that has been the case. And notice here this big drop, 39, 45, big drop. There was World War II. So there was a different, like you cannot look at this 45 years and think about it in terms of, it's not the same type of economy. You can look at the trend after and see this recessions when unemployment goes up and then the economy recovers, unemployment goes down. So you want to look at all these kind of things. And so you can see here all the different recessions, what unemployment did, the increase in percentage. This graph here goes only to 2019. So if you had graphs for just pre-COVID, if you had for COVID, then you will see another big jump up to 10%, I think around 10%, and then a big drop after the economy starts to recover. Notice this big increase in unemployment, 1929, that starts with the recession, the Great Depression. So you can see that the Great Depression was the worst time in the US economy for unemployment. Lastly, the macroeconomics look at US inflation rates. And so inflation is at all price level, and you can see when the price goes up or down. And remember that pricing going up too much is bad. If you think about now how bad you feel when the price go up too fast. But also prices decreasing is not a good thing. It means the economy is very weak. So you really want a little bit of a price growth constant, but not too much. That's the main idea. Okay. And then you look at imports and exports, so you see how much the US economy exports and imports and the difference between the two. And since the 70s, 80s, we have imported more than exported in value. But then there is another important section, which is monetary policy. So how does the government control the economy? And there are two ways they can do that. One way is called monetary policy, controlling the amount of money and the banking system. And we'll see this, how that works and how they can operate, which is very interesting, how they do it, how they can control interest rates. So you remember just a year ago, a year and a half ago, when the economy when the inflation started to boom, then the Fed did something. What they did, they increased interest rates. That means if you wanted to borrow money, it becomes more expensive. And that's one tool to control the economy. And the other one is fiscal policy. So in this case, it's based on not on the Fed, but it's the government. The government can increase taxes, decrease taxes, spend some money, spend less money, and this will have an effect on the big picture of the economy. So this is what we cover these chapters. So both are important. First, supply demand, because it's really the base for a lot of understanding of what we do in the future, and also for your life. Understanding the markets is very important. And the other one is what macro is about. And so once you know what macro is about, from next week, we'll go dive right into what is GDP, how is it calculated, how unemployment rate is calculated, what policies can be done to that, and how inflation works, and how it's calculated. So this is the chapter. Let me know if you have any questions. Send me emails. I try to answer as fast as I can. I know that sometimes you might have issues with Connect or Blackboard. If that happens, send me an email and I'll try to help you as much as I can and direct you to people that can help you. So this is it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Again, if you have questions about specific questions, send me an email and I'll make a little video about it and I'll post for everybody else. So thank you, and I will see you next week. I said it already, but I'll say it again. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.